Hey there, this is Ann Teagarden and Grant Teagarden.
Hey there.
With episode 39 of the Unveiled podcast. And we thought it would be fun for something different to try to have the two of us today because I'd like to hear Grant's thoughts chiming in on this subject. So I am getting back to, finally, our book by Shaunti Feldhahn for Women Only. And it's about chapter 7 this week. And she titles it, Keeper of the Photo Files, Why It's So Difficult for Him to Not Look and So Hard to Forget What He's Seen. And I think we're talking about beautiful women here.
We are. Right?
Yes. And I mean, I've noticed your head turn when a beautiful image of a woman comes on TV or we're walking, in the mall or something. And so I know it's hard to not notice. But, does it mean that you're attracted or just that you're noticing?
Right. And hopefully you've seen it turn twice in a sense.
That's what I'm saying. Yes, I've seen you turn your head away from the image.
Yeah.
You're right. Good clarification.
So, because it is, and we're going to talk about this, but guys notice beauty, physical beauty. God wired us up that way. But then it's also a choice on our end what we immediately choose to do with that.
Yeah. So we know men are visual. I mean, I think most of us know that. But I don't know that women fully understand what that means because it may be different for us.
Yeah.
And I think what Shaunti brings out in here that I like is that no matter how devoted a Christian or devoted a husband you are or a man is, he still may notice other beautiful women.
Yeah, he will notice.
Exactly. And he still may struggle with
right.
it. It's not just noticing, but it might be a struggle.
Right.
Because,
what do you do with it?
Right. It's a very common temptation. And I think we need to understand it's a common and normal temptation, but that doesn't necessarily mean we prefer it or even that it's right in some ways, especially what you do with it, like you said.
What do you do with it?
So noticing does not necessarily equal lusting.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So I would like to talk about these beautiful women, women like us. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. No.
But there are, different levels of beauty to different men. But a woman that a man finds very attractive can be an eye magnet.
Yes.
Like it's a magnet. It just draws the attention. And according to Shaunti's survey, men can bring these images back to mind either voluntarily or it can just pop in their mind involuntarily.
Yes.
And I know you used the illustration with me that's like walking to a room where there's bread baking, and you can't help.
Right, you can't help. You
smell it.
Right, you walk into a room and you get that aroma, right? And you all of a sudden you're like, and then you're looking around. Where's what's here? Is it apple pie? Is it just a loaf of bread? But in any event, it immediately catches your attention. And the way God has wired up our brains, the brains of guys, that for most guys they have that immediacy of those sorts of sensations. And she talks about it in her book. It's a particular part of the brain that when a shapely gal comes in, it activates within the part of the male brain that also activates other involuntary reflexes like digestion and breathing, right? I mean, these are things that you don't consciously say, breathe in, breathe out. So it's part of the automatic response. Now, women's brains, they don't activate in the same place. If they see Patrick Swayze,
we may notice,
that's right.
Okay, that's a little old illustration.
Yeah.
But we may see a good-looking guy, but we don't get like that same adrenaline rush.
Right.
Or our brain, and the studies they've done, the brain does not light up in the same places.
In the same places, it lights up in the thinking parts of the brain where it's a cognitive decision of, oh, look at those abs, right? So just recognizing the biological differences helps bring a little bit of perspective on the sensitivity to things.
You had a story about college.
Oh, yeah. So, I think it was my first year of college, so before I met this love of my life. But
I wasn't there yet.
Yeah, that's right. I wasn't there. I remember being in the college eatery, cafeteria, and sitting there with somebody and eating, and all of a sudden, a young gal came in, was not dressed provocatively, but she just had this sort of knockout aura about her. And what was amazing to me was how quiet the cafeteria got. And I looked around and I saw all the guys and their eyes were just glued to her as she walked up to get her food, and I think she fixed a salad in a little container and walked out the door. And it really just struck me at how, and I thought, wow, is this what life is like for her every time she goes to get a meal? is all of a sudden she walks into a room and she hears everything go sort of silent. But it did really just wake up for me that aspect of, I guess just seeing it in that form.
Yes, that like you said, the whole cafeteria got quiet.
Got quiet because they immediately sensed, and for the guys' brains, all of a sudden they were just like, holy smokes.
Right, and I think again, it's a involuntary reaction that the eyes were drawn. But then what do you do with the thoughts?
Right.
Yes, men can wrench their thoughts away. They don't have to sit there going, you know.
Exactly.
And as a married man, that's a discipline that has to happen. But like you talked about, it is biological. I love, Shaunti had a story in the book about her 4-year-old son when he was 4. They were at the mall walking along, and all of a sudden they realized he wasn't with them anymore. So they went backwards looking for him, and he was standing in front of the Victoria's Secret window just staring. And they kind of walked up, and he said, "Those ladies are wonderful," or something to that effect. And the dad kind of leaned down and said, "Okay, why do you like those ladies?" And he said, "They're bare tummies. It makes my tummy feel good." And so her point was, even as a 4-year-old, he has a male brain, and he's not sexual. He's not thinking any bad thoughts, but he's already drawn to that female form.
His brain is wired up to recognize a female form that, in God's providence, wants men to, like it.
Exactly, to be pleasing.
Yeah.
And so I think for me that was just a really good story to understand. It's ingrained, it's part of the biology. But again, the temptation doesn't necessarily mean sin, because we as women can get really paranoid. I read a blog just recently about women who, they could hardly go to church because they thought their husbands were looking at the women singing up on the worship stage. And so, we can't be so paranoid about that. And I love how James chapter 1, 14 and 15, it says, "But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death." And so again, a temptation is there, but until you let it get planted and you water it and all of that, then it gives birth to sin.
Right.
So to not necessarily get, angry that they noticed, if they turn their head away, that's something we can be grateful and appreciative about. So you have no choice about being blindsided in the restaurant when the woman walks in, but you do have a choice of looking away.
Yeah, and knowing that the audience for this here is mostly women, I'm not going to go into the things that guys do, but hopefully you recognize the fact that, guys have to make a conscious decision that, some families talk about eyes left, kind of the joke if they're raising up boys, meaning look away. But it is a choice that, we make and what we try to pursue. And so, for the ladies, don't focus on the fact that we are initially made aware, but focus on the fact that, hey, I am so glad that this husband of mine is not trying to fill his mind with this.
With those other images.
That's right.
And so I like to, Shaunti gives several reassurances to women in here, because again, we can be like, because our culture is a minefield of this now.
Yes.
So reassurance 1, he probably wishes he could reserve his visual nature just for you. Yes,
I think that's true. And I mean, it's something that me as a guy, I try to do. I try to notice Anne when she is in a cute outfit, and I try to actually consciously store those images in my mind. Because the only way to get rid of an image is to replace an image.
Right.
And so, and if I was doing a guy's video, I could go on and talk about that, and I won't. But in essence, that's a key part of things.
Okay, reassurance 2. He can see a beautiful woman without the sexual temptation. And for me, I think it's like looking at great art. I can look at artwork and think, wow, that's beautiful. I can look at a guy and think, oh, nice biceps, and move on, and not necessarily do that. And I know, like for you, you're going to notice a great car.
Right. Yeah.
Sunset.
Brand new Corvette goes by, new body style, and it's like it's a novelty because it's a new body style, and you're like, wow, hey, look at that. But it doesn't mean I want to own one, right? I mean, I haven't driven a Corvette in a lot of years, but they're not the daily driver that I want. And so, that's a key aspect for women to, hopefully try to convey as well, is just because a guy does notice another beautiful lady in the room
Right.
Doesn't mean he has any desire to spend his life with her.
That's right. And I think God created us to be beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, he wanted us to be visually pleasing to men.
Yes.
So that's just part of it. Okay, reassurance 3. Every man is different and discipline makes a difference. And I think this is important that some men are going to struggle with this more than others.
Yes.
So you may realize, you may talk to your husband and find out this really isn't that big of an issue for him. Maybe he's just not very much of a visual person. He's more auditory or something. But I love, she gave an illustration, like let's say as women, we're at a party and there's this decadent chocolate cake sitting over there. Now, for some women, that cake is going to call out to you the whole time you're at the party, eat me, eat me. And you're trying to watch your weight, or you're on a diet or whatever, and it's tempting you that whole time, and you have to keep wrenching your thoughts away from the chocolate cake. Others can go see the chocolate cake and think, no, I don't want any, and go through the rest of the party without a second thought about the chocolate cake. And I think it's the same is true for men. Some men are going to keep thinking about that woman over there in the corner, and I have to not look over there. And other men are be like, oh, I noticed her, I discarded the thought, and I'm done.
Right.
So to not assume that, oh my gosh, there's a gorgeous woman at this party. That's what he's thinking about the whole time, and we got to leave. No, not necessarily.
Right.
Anything else on that?
No, I mean, we may get to this here in a minute or so, but an element to be sensitive to the fact that as your husband tries to adjust to compensate, of saying, well, hey, let's go over here. You're at a party or something, with that illustration of a lady comes in that is visually attractive, and he's like, well, let's move to another room. And actually, not to be offended by that, but to say, sure, whatever.
Yeah, good idea.
Good idea.
Right. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, no temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. Again, this is a common temptation. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability, but with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure it. So all men have a way of escape. They have the ability to wrench their mind away or move rooms or
just like you have the ability to, leave the sight of that chocolate cake.
That's right. I think this reassurance is the one that probably hits home the most for women. It's not because of you. I think that there can be an insecurity that you're looking at this other woman because I'm not as beautiful as she is. And Shaunti points out that I could be a bikini model and you're still going to be attracted, or not attracted, but your eyes are still going to notice this other woman. And she brings up Job. God, in speaking to Satan about Job, he said, have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. You can't get much more higher praise than that from God Almighty. But later in Job 31:1, Job himself says, I made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at a young woman. So even Job, he's, God gives him high praise as a man of integrity, but yet he says, I have to guard my eyes.
I have to guard my eyes. When I notice, I gotta, nope, not gonna go there.
Right, but it doesn't have anything to do
with the lady. And, we are all, as individuals, basically insecure. I think it started with the fall. All of a sudden we realize we're naked, and we have these insecurities in life. And for women, definitely understand that natural beauty is an insecurity. I get senses of it. When Anne might make mention of, oh wow, look how muscular that guy is, and I'm like, well, okay, because I'm not Mr. Muscle. She didn't marry me for my muscles. But in any event, so we get tastes of that, but I know that us, the guys, don't feel it the same way, to the same depth that women feel it. But, if I can just speak for the guys, just please know that it's not because of anything that is lacking in your personal beauty. Because really, a lot of beauty comes from the inside.
That's right.
We can't spend time on that, but, to me, it's like what I notice is the joy in somebody's. And, that's...
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and that's what reassurance 5, this doesn't impact his feelings for you.
Yes.
And again, we... as women, we can dress modestly to help other men not be tempted. But I think if we're joyful that's going to be on our face,
Right.
and that's going to draw their attention to our face.
Yes.
And I think that's what's most important.
Yeah, because I mean, the car illustration I used earlier, it's like there are a lot of hot-looking sports cars. I don't want to drive most of those every day of the week. They're no fun to drive. The visibility's terrible. They're just not what I want to spend my life in. And, there's the parallel. It's like I know who I want to spend my life with. I want to know,
right.
And I know why and all of that. So, outward beauty is a part of that. So, I won't lie there. But yet God wires us up also, all the guys, to have, what we find beautiful differs in different things.
Yes, and just like one illustration for us personally is you don't want me spending an hour and a half.
No, yeah, I don't want high maintenance, right?
Right, you do not want me spending an hour and a half fixing myself up every day.
Yeah.
And so again, you can look at that someone else, but I don't have to live with it.
I don't want to have to wait an hour to go on a date because she's trying to fix herself up. It's like, blue jeans, sweatshirt, smile on your face, let's go.
Exactly. Right. So that's particular to you. Everybody has to figure that out. All right. Well, what can we as wives do to help the most? I know one thing. Well, you go ahead and tell, and then I'll give any thoughts you don't cover.
Oh, well, no, you go ahead and start.
Okay. So I think open and honest conversation about, is this a struggle for you? In what ways you struggle? What kind of things tempt you? And not to get defensive about it, to handle that information maturely and to let them know it's safe to share this. And I'm asking because I want to pray for you and I want to be sensitive to what kind of situations make that happen. And I think helping our men not get into those situations, like if I'm picking a hotel room, to not get the one that's staring at the pool with all the women in bikinis, if that's an issue.
Right.
It doesn't mean it's like if you get into the hotel room and it's facing the pool, you have to freak out. But if they're like, would you like poolside or garden side? You can be like, oh, garden side would be great,
Right.
So again, just, helping.
Yes. Yeah, to have a conversation that helps you, that helps alleviate some of your insecurities. I mean, ultimately, I think the wife is not the great accountability partner in all this. I think she should feel free to ask, but I think guys need to have guys that they're in, relationship with, that they are kind of checking in on each other on how these things are going. So.
Yeah, and that can be something to encourage,
right.
but not demand, but encourage. And I think ultimately we have to trust our husbands. If they've lost that trust for some reason, that's a different issue. But in general, to trust, to pray for you. I know I've prayed many times. I pray all the time about guarding his mind from these images and things. And if their husband is in porn, I think we just want to say porn is bad. Porn is detrimental to your husband. It's detrimental to your marriage. So we're not saying, oh, well, that's how he's wired up.
Right.
No, we're not. Okay, porn, bad. And so if they're struggling with that, they need help.
Yeah, you need to reach out to more targeted ministries and help in those areas, because it's not what, God has given us a gift in our marriage partner, and it's a gift to be enjoyed fully, and not to take a cheap substitute that isn't real.
That's right. So I think just to clarify on those things. All right, any last thoughts on that?
No, I just to the degree that it helps you as a wife, your insecurities in those areas, is that, even me, for reading this chapter and seeing it in the book, it helped to kind of just see it all on the whole element of the brain. And you realize, because, growing up as a guy, not knowing that is kind of like, there is this battle. She talks about that, it can be an incessant battle, particularly for adolescents, for those that are, raising some teenage boys and some of that. It is a battle that you sort of wonder, God, why is this so hard? And I remember kind of asking God that, through the years, is God, why have you wired us up this way? But to realize that we are wired up that way, and then we just have to, kind of put a box around it, set it off to the side, move forward, and realize the difference between temptation and sin, and all of that. And just, so to the degree that wives can be a support in the husband's battle in that regard, is a much better help than being an ever constant sort of critique.
Yeah, and I think God purposely made women to be pleasing to men, and He wired the brain to respond to that.
Yeah.
So it's part of His plan.
Right.
It's just our culture has exploited that.
Yeah, it has exploited.
Because before, I think you only saw so much of that in your own wife. You weren't seeing it all around you. So God, the enemy has taken something that God designed and meant for good, and He's exploited it. So I think that's really what we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, remember, you are beautiful, you are loved, and you are enough. Go in peace. Bye.